So I'm watching the blue build on the left-hand side, and I'm just causing overlap. So as I'm starting to run out of real estate, if you could close slightly for me, I just reposition. Now I'm capturing the buckle perspective. Notice every time I stop moving, that's when the system adds a blue scan. That's the new data that I'm capturing. So overlapping, placing my crosshairs exactly where I want to capture that data. And we're capturing full contour. The reason we capture full contour is because I don't want a generic tooth library. Now I really want to see what my true neighbors are like. I came up 2 teeth because with this system what I'm going to do is utilize my mesial neighbor to help me build the tooth anatomy. So if you look up at the top screen where that blue is, I go back to my last blue scan and I continue my overlapping. So now I'm doing my lingual rotations here and moving back mesial. So I've done that full circle, capturing the full contour of my preparations as well as my neighbors. And again, I have those neighbors, so I have anatomical dentition to match up my bite scans to my prep scans. And I'm ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and trim my model just like we would chair side, right? I'm going to use my virtual lathe. When I pour up a model, I got to get rid of the garbage. So I'm just trimming away what I don't need. I circle what I don't want. And what the system is doing now is going through my scans that I captured, and it's going to remove this data. After that data is removed, I'm going to move on to the bite. For time's sake, what I've already done is actually taken the bite on Gary and I've scanned it in. I'm just going to trim this little piece right here too because it's close to my margin. So I'll show you what that looks like and then I'll show you what you need to do. So for Gary, he is free to go. I'll sit him up.
Yep.
You're welcome, thank you. Alright, so what I'll do now with this data is go to my bite scans. Obviously normally Gary would still be in the chair. I would have scanned in the bite. I'll just reset this scan here for you so you can see what it looks like. When you're scanning in the bite, what you're going to be doing is just capturing the occlusal data. Think of it like occlusal paper. On the occlusal, I don't need to know what's going on the buccal and the lingual. So I'm just capturing that occlusal data. That's why it looks draping right here, because I didn't care what that data was. What I'm going to do now is select my bite area. I'm telling the system that this right here is going to be his opposing dentition, so that it's going to take this into account when it's creating the occlusal surface of my restoration. So I don't just get a Lee Culp tooth library A, I get a Gary Severance tooth library A, meshed with A. Okay, that's our autogenesis. So here's going to be my virtual occlusal paper, and you'll see that once I get to design. What I want to do is just make sure from underneath nothing's hanging below my cusp tips, because the system may think it's a cusp, right? So I've got another little virtual tool. Here's my virtual little perio blade, or my 15 blade. I circle that little piece that's hanging down below. That's gone, I'm ready to go. I've got another little guy right there, no big deal. Let's just go ahead and trim that off. Always rotating, lots of clicking and rotating. Just like when you get a lab case back from the from your lab technician, you don't just look at it from the occlusal and go, yeah, this looks great, it's going to fit. No, you rotate, you take a look at it from all angles. Now once we get into the margin, what I'm going to do is set an orientation. An orientation for each tooth. Well, what's orientation? Orientation is, let's think of it kind of like path of insertion, okay? How is this tooth going to drop down and then form to fit in the occlusal plane, okay? So right now, my system's saying I'm on tooth number 19, so I'm setting the orientation for tooth 19, taking into consideration cusp tips and occlusal grooves here, and then I'm going to take a look at it from the buccal perspective. What I'm looking at from the buccal perspective is I just really want my marginal ridges to be even, the occlusal plane. This is not correct, so I need to take this tooth and pull it down. Just tip it down a little bit, double check again from my buccal perspective. I'm getting closer, a little bit more. There we go. So now what I'm just looking at right here are my marginal ridges. So my orientation is now set. Do the same thing on tooth number 18. Now this is a multiples case. Alright, I wish I would have had Terry here today. She just has one tooth prepped. It would have been much faster and easier for me, but we're going to do both. So here's tooth number 18. I'm just going to do the very same thing here. Double check it from my buccal view. And this isn't rocket science. This isn't if your orientation's off, nothing's going to fit. That's not the way it works here. It's just as long as it's within ballpark. So I'm good to go. My orientation is now set, and I'm going to mark my margins. I'm going to mark my margin first on tooth number 18 because that's what's highlighted. So I'm just going to rotate this using my show features, which is going to highlight my hard edge here, that hard enamel edge. I'm going to use my trace, and I'm just going to go ahead and start to mark my margin here. We have 3 different tools that you can utilize to mark margins. Trace is used most frequently just because trace is the tool that you need to use when you have a subgingival margin. How many of you are doing 100% supragingival preparations? We can't really do that, can we, considering 80% of our dentistry is redentistry. So I'm just going to bump this out to the edge. We always are going to have to use trace a little bit. A really cool tool that we have here, as you can kind of see in a proximal, I'm kind of losing my data, is ICE. ICE stands for I see everything. When I left click on the ICE button, it's going to take this stone layer off and it's going to show me my live view. So it's going to show me Gary's actual dentition. Now I can see live, alright, there's the edge of my enamel margin right there. But my deal is if I see it in stone, I set it in stone. But I can continue to adjust my margin, and because I know I'm not milling these out, I'm not going to spend a lot of time and make this perfect. But I can see that hard edge in this live view. This is called ICE Spotlight. So it puts a spotlight over the area that I'm trying to draw. So once I have my margin pulled all the way up to the edge, I kind of like to move in a counterclockwise rotation so that I know exactly where I'm going. There we are. Very nice. Now, so I've got this margin drawn, I'm ready to move over to tooth number 19. Once tooth number 19 is drawn, I'm going to move on to design. So same thing here. I can utilize another tool, but like I told you, if I was to utilize my paint, paint is for supragingival preps. I'm just going to left click here and paint my margin. But what you'll notice is I'm going to have a lot more editing to do because it's not 100% supragingival. So I'm going to get a little bit more of a bumpy line. Not bad though. So here I'm going to fix that area where it was sub G. I put on my ICE view. I can completely see my margin here. I always encourage to really blow up your scans. It's like you have a serious set of loops on, or a dental microscope, right? Now my margin's drawn correctly. I double check it all the way around, make sure there are not any areas that I need to clean up like that. Add my segments, which is just in essence redrawing. Alright, one more little blip there and we're ready to go. My margin is drawn. I'm in tooth number 19. Now, autogenesis takes into account cusp heights, marginal ridge,